So, Dr. Joy, you wrote the book Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows, which is basically an introduction to the concept of carnism. And that is a term that you coined. Can you tell us what carnism is?
Sure. So carnism is the invisible belief system that conditions us to eat certain animals. It's essentially the opposite of veganism. We often assume that only vegans and vegetarians follow a belief system when it comes to eating animals. But the only reason that we learn, for example, to eat pigs but not dogs is because we do follow a belief system when it comes to eating animals. When eating animals is not a necessity, which is true for much of the world today. I mean, not for everybody. Some people cannot make their food choices freely. They're not economically or geographically able to. But today, many people in the world can make their food choices freely. And so when eating animals is not a necessity, then it's a choice. And choices always stem from beliefs. So carnism is it's a special kind of belief system. It's what's called a dominant belief system or ideology. That means that it's invisible, as I said. It is widespread. It's woven through the very structure of society to shape norms, laws, beliefs, behaviors, etc. It's institutionalized. That means it's embraced and maintained by all the major social institutions, family, religion, state. And that means it becomes internalized. In other words, when we're born into a dominant system such as carnism, we learn to look at the world through the lens of carnism. We don't even realize it. So, we study nutrition, for example. We're actually studying carnistic nutrition. We don't see the bias that's built right into the very system.
Do you recall the moment that this concept clicked for you personally? I know that you coined the term in 2001, is what I read, carnism. So it was a while back that this concept clicked for you. And when you fell out of that specious type of mentality, was it overnight, a moment in time, or a period of time, or?
Well, I mean, there was a difference between when I recognized it as an ideology or a belief system and when I had actually stepped out of that system myself. So, I mean, a lot of vegans can appreciate this, I'm sure, where they've stepped outside of the carnistic box. They're no longer looking at the world through the lens of carnism. They're seeing not different things, the same things very differently, but they don't necessarily recognize that there's actually an ideology or a belief system influencing the way that they used to think or the way that other people think. So for me, it was similar. I stepped out of the box first, and then I recognized the ideology. So I stopped eating meat. I mean, I was looking back, I could see, I thought of myself, after I became vegan, as having been like a vegan who was kind of living in a non-vegan's body for a long period of time. Like veganism was so in alignment with my own core moral values, like it is for many people. I cared about animals. I certainly cared about justice. I would never want to inflict harm on them. And yet I was eating them and, meat and dairy, meat, eggs, dairy on a regular basis. What happened for me was that I ended up getting sick from eating a hamburger back in 1989, and I wound up hospitalized on IV antibiotics. I was really sick. And after that experience, I stopped eating meat and eggs, and then shortly thereafter, I stopped eating dairy. I didn't stop eating these carnistic products because I realized that there was an ethical, contradiction in my values and my practices. I stopped eating them because I was just disgusted because I had been so sick. And in this process of learning about my new diet, which was vegetarian, and this was back in the 80s, so it was like before the internet, I stumbled upon information about animal agriculture. And what I learned shocked and horrified me. I could not believe what was going on in the world. I could not believe that I had spent my entire life essentially being blind to what was right in front of me, willfully blind without knowing that. And so, but what shocked me in some ways even more was that nobody I talked to about what I was learning wanted to hear what I had to say. They would tell me, don't don't tell me that you'll ruin my meal, or they call me a crazy vegan hippie propagandist. And these were people, just like I had been, who were rational, caring people. And, but they would just shut down when it came to talking about this issue. The defensiveness was so intense. And this was what ultimately led me to do my doctoral research on the psychology of eating animals. I wanted to know what on earth was going on in the world. And in the process of interviewing people, I interviewed meat eaters and vegans and vegetarians and butchers, meat cutters, people who had raised and killed their own animals for food. I recognized that there was this very consistent contradiction that people who still ate animals had, or killed animals had, between caring about animals and not wanting to cause them to suffer, not even wanting to see them suffer, and yet participating in their suffering and in their harm. And I realized that these kinds of contradictions, they don't exist in a vacuum, right? Something much bigger was going on. And that's when it clicked for me. Wow, like there's an ideology here that's really informing the way massive amounts of people, basically everybody in the world today, I mean, carnism is an ideology in the world today, thinks, feels, and acts when it comes to eating animals.
And there's this defense system that society's put up. That you've pinpointed the 3 N's. Can you talk about the 3 N's, that this makes it feel okay for people to have this dissonance where we can say we love animals, but we can also confine them, take away their freedoms, take them away from their mothers and fathers, separate families, and then ultimately take their milk or their honey, and ultimately kill them, and still feel good about ourselves that we love animals?
Yeah, well, I mean, most people are not actually actively taking it away. They're passively, doing this through being an end consumer, right? Supporting the process of production. So there are varying levels of distance. Nevertheless, the same psychology, this carnistic mentality that I describe, is at work. It's just a matter of to what degree. It's the same psychology that enables somebody to kill an animal up close is the psychology that enables somebody to eat that animal's body, even if the violence itself was as far away as, the animals' bodies are turned into, or the factories, I should say, that animals' bodies are turned into meat are in. So it's important to recognize that carnism is, it's a violent ideology or belief system. It's literally organized around violence. Meat cannot be procured without killing. And, egg and dairy production, as you know, cause extensive harm to animals. And of course, as I said before, most people would never willingly support such completely unnecessary and such extensive violence toward animals. And so systems such as carnism, these oppressive or violent systems such as carnism, and all oppressive systems are actually structured the same way. All of these isms like sexism and racism, these systems are constructed to enable caring people, rational, compassionate people, to act in ways that are completely irrational and support cruelty, to do so without fully realizing what they're doing. And so what carnism does is it uses these defense mechanisms. These carnistic defenses, as I call them, are psychological defense mechanisms. What they do is they distort our perceptions and disconnect us from our empathy, from our authentic feelings, so that we can act against our values without realizing what we're doing. So, for example, when we look at a hamburger, if we're not vegan, we see meat and feel appetized. So our perception is distorted. We don't see a dead animal and we don't feel disgusted. We see meat and we feel appetized. If, however, somebody said, by the way, that is a golden retriever burger, chances are that if we were meat eaters, would automatically see it as a dead animal, the dead animal that it is, and therefore feel disgusted and not want to eat it. So what carnism does is it conditions us to disconnect from our authentic thoughts and feelings when it comes to the select animals that we have learned to classify as edible. And this changes from culture to culture. So, Why We Love Dogs, the first foreign language that my book came out in was Korean. And I went to South Korea to give carnism presentations and talk about my work. And it was really interesting because there are not everybody, for sure, not even most people, but many people in South Korea eat dogs. But they don't eat all kinds of dogs. They only eat certain kinds of dogs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
When I was saying, imagine that the dog you're eating is a Maltese, people were horrified because you would never eat a Maltese. Those are animals that you have as pets. So the same psychology is at play. It's just that different types of animals are classified as edible in different cultures, but people have the same way of relating to these animals. And so one of the defenses I talk about in my book, and Why We Love Dogs, is the defense of justification. And I refer to the 3 N's of justification. We learn to believe in this mythology that eating animals is normal, natural, and necessary. And we learn to believe so deeply in this mythology. Most of us go through our entire lives never questioning whether these beliefs are actually true, whether they're based on fact or whether they are simply a set of widely held opinions, which they are. And so these justifications, of course, have been used and continue to be used to justify violent practices. They've been used to justify violent practices throughout human history. Male dominance is normal, natural, and necessary. Heterosexual supremacy is normal, natural, and necessary. But these myths, what they essentially do is they distance us from our natural empathy for animals so that it becomes much easier for us to support practices that harm them.
So thank you so much for tuning in today. If we helped you in any way, then click the subscribe button and let's keep hanging out together. We have so much more to share with you.
And if you need more information on actually making the switch for good, please visit us at switchforgood.org for loads of info. And you can subscribe to our mailing list where you will receive all sorts of super cool gifts, discount codes to our very fave dairy-free products, and a lifetime of powerful health tips.
So join us on the journey to switch for good. This is the future.